Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Stackpla.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns is absent. Councilmember Stearns is here. Mayor Pro Tem Kleur. Here. Mayor Collins.
Here. There are no special presentations this evening, so we're going to start by opening up public comment. Kathy, anybody on the list who's present or online?
I need to admit some people. If there's anyone present in our remote audience that would like to participate in public comment, please raise your hand now. Our first speaker will be Johanna.
Hi there, Johanna. Just unmute yourself, and you know the routine.
Good evening.
Yep. Hi, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, hi, this is Johanna. Good evening, everyone. Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. A couple of things I wanted to follow up on. Oh, you know what? I think I'm getting that echo again because there was a delay in getting into the meeting. Give me a second here.
Yeah, Johanna, make sure you turn off everything else.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, you know, I just want to let you know there is a delay in being let into the Zoom. And so that because there's not enough time to switch into the Zoom, like I didn't have enough time to turn off the YouTube one. So, okay. Anyway, good evening. I just wanted to bring to your attention some noticing inconsistencies, and it sounds like maybe the city is going above and beyond noticing the neighbors, but there was two notices provided. One was a Prop 218 for a utility rate study, which my tenants who are utility customers did not receive a notice. Yet I received 4 notices. I did pass it along, so that was all good. But there's work going on Pine Street, and I would think it sounds like whether or not you're a utility customer, you would be notified of this. And with that notice, all the residents were notified, but not the owner. But in either case, it kind of leads me back to it would be really wonderful if we could have an email list going so that things like this can be emailed to the residents and the owners rather than, actually going into people's units into a private building and hanging things on doors, which, I appreciate the effort, but it's just with all the crime going on, I hesitate for tenants to let anybody into the building unless I'm notified first and it's okay for them to go in, because it could be crime happening. Anyway, I would like to reintroduce the idea of getting an email list for the city and for the sphere of influence that includes all residents and owners, to the extent that people have email. Obviously, if they don't have email, then that's their prerogative. But I just think it would make things a lot more efficient, and we could also use this for emergency alerts for our community. Anyway, I sent you an email on this, but I just wanted to re-mention this because I do think it's important, especially as fire season is upon us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Johanna. Guys, can you turn down these two speakers? Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else? Let's go to council and staff comments then. Todd, you want to lead this off, please?
I can. Just a couple follow-ups. One of them, we talked about Green Waste Day. Two things. With the stuff going on at Crystal Geyser, it kind of got dropped for a week. And now I have got calls into the Wairika transfer station as we need quotes on bins and haven't gotten a call back, but I'll make sure I get through this week and then we'll set something up either at the very end of May or the early, beginning of June. I wanted to kind of give you a bit of an update with Crystal Geyser. We're still moving towards, at least on paper, towards annexation. There are a lot of issues that we need to work through to get us to a point where we can then bring things to LAFCO. We need preliminary planning. We need, landowner petitions. We need to get CEQA going. And then, the big thing is then entering property tax negotiations with the county because they're going to want their pound of flesh if we're going to pull this property into the city. And I think the big argument for them is, for our side, is if we pull the Crystal Geyser into the city, they're going to see tax revenue, as opposed to if this parcel remains outside of the city, it's unlikely it's going to get developed because I'm not sure the county has the resources or the know-how to actually get development off the ground. Alongside with that same issue, I mentioned before that we're in negotiations with the owners to see if we can get control of property at a certain elevation for our city water tank. And up there at the same location is, a large well. And we're talking about the city taking over that well to allow us to plan for future drought conditions to ensure that we're ready. And the owners seem receptive up to this point that, what they want in return is assurances that the water tank, anything we provide up there, which is reasonable, that it serves their development on their parcel. So I've got a meeting with the owners tomorrow with an engineer from Pace about looking at the size of that proposed water tank and see if it needs to be any larger and discuss all the issues and get them out on the table.
Thank you, Todd. Muriel, do you have anything? Okay. Council?
I got something.
Oh, sorry there, Chief.
No worries. For council, anybody that would like to attend tomorrow, May 10th, is the National Peace Officer Memorial. They'll be reading the names off of all Siskiyou County law enforcement who have lost their lives in the line of duty between 12:15 and 12:45. So if anybody wants to come up, it'll be in front of the old courthouse of Wairika. And then on a second note, I attended a meeting this last week with my acting dispatch supervisor. We met with Siskiyou County OES, and the topic was Zone Haven, which is now live in Siskiyou County. So for those of you that don't know what Zone Haven is, this is basically a live map that citizens can go to that will allow them to see what evacuation zones are, where the evacuation routes are, places to take their animals. It's just this big, great resource that's going on. So what it works with is partnered with Code Red. So once we get Zone Haven established, and we already have the zones here,
we're going to be sending out flyers that kind of look like this. On one side is the Zone Haven QR code. You click on that, put your address in, tells you what zone you're in. Click on the other side, it's a code red. You click on your QR code. It's going to automatically let you enter code red, sign up for code red, and put in your zone. So how it works is, should we have a lava fire and we want to evacuate a certain section of the city, and my dispatch center has one dispatcher working who's taken 25 911 calls. This allows for Wairika City Dispatch Center to go on to Zone Haven, plug in the evacuation routes, plug in our code red, and allow them to put out a code red evacuation so that our dispatch center can continue working, which should cut down on the delays greatly because it's just so hard. And it's all set up so where you don't have to know the area. All you got to do is type in the number and plug it in, and then it goes off. For citizens, go to aware.zonehaven.com. Type in your address, and it will tell you what zone you're in. Information that you get on Zone Haven will tell you if there's any emergency for your zone currently occurring. And this is a live Google map, so you can Google Map, see your house, everything. It will tell you who your local jurisdiction, fire, police, have you, and it'll also provide information. What the Zone Haven does for us is it allows us to pre-plan. So it will show a certain zone, for example, where the police department is. It tells us how many businesses are there, how many people are there in the daytime, how many people should be there at night, and what the evacuation zones or shelter in place. So we can pre-plan using this. So when we have an event, we can automatically click in that zone, and we've already tells me that I need 10 law enforcement for evacuations and holding. And so it's going to be great work for us. It's really the step of law enforcement catching up to fireside, because we handle the evacuations and fire handles fires. We should be having mailers that look kind of like this going out to every citizen or every resident in the city of Mount Shasta. I'm hoping by around June 1st. They're working on our QR code right now, so that everybody will get this. We'll also looking at maybe putting your zone on your water bill so you get it. And there is a Know Your Zone campaign that OES is going to be pushing out. There'll be billboards. Siskiyou County, Jackson County, they have Zone Haven. Shasta County has not signed up for it yet. So we're ahead of some of the bigger counties with this. But I think with this, it will cut down on our call service. We'll be able to direct people to the Zone Haven site. And it also provides the 211 information, so evacuations. And one of the things that we talked about is they will be putting up shortly evacuation centers for livestock and for people with pets and where to go. So that should all be there. So hopefully this worked during the Dixie Fire. They used it during the Dixie Fire. Citizens can just go online and show that your evacuation center is going to be there. My dispatchers are getting trained on this right now on how to plug the information in, as well as the other dispatch centers in the county. So we can just plug in that the hospital or the, Mount Shasta High School is the evacuation zone, and people can go to there, and we can direct people away, unclog our 911 lines so that we can handle other emergencies going on. So that's been a real positive. So I look forward to getting some more information out to you here by June.
Councilors, any comments? City Manager, would you, are there any committee updates to do?
Yes, the DIAC committee met. You may remember that one of their pushes is the Flower of Life statue. And where they want to put it is a location that, plows make regular passes and push snow up into that location. And we've told the DIAC that it's not a preferred location because of that issue and the likelihood of that sculpture being damaged. But I, told them if they can hire a engineering firm that can show me a reinforced plinth or base for this that can resist snow plowing, or they've got some way to resolve this, I would consider it. It's just, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. That an engineer can find that solution, but right now I'm hoping that something can come from that. So that's one issue. Another issue is they want to potentially expand the definition of downtown in their mind in terms of their jurisdiction and move it south down Mount Shasta Boulevard. And to move those boundaries, it isn't as simple as saying, yes, you can do that. I mean, you've got to, since you're collecting revenue from folks within that district, it would need to go to a vote. So there's a lot more to it than just saying we're going to expand it. But I'm working with them on that. And there's some ancillary issues. They've purchased a couple bike racks for them. We've got one installed in town, and the original location they wanted to put the second. There isn't enough space. So I'm working with one of their consultants to see if we can find another location. So that's basically the gist of the DEAC.
Let's move on to the consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, April 25th, 2022, regular city council meeting, April 19th, 2022, joint workshop. B, the committee meeting minutes from the Downtown Enhancery Advisory Committee special meeting on March 30th, 2022. C, the second reading and adoption of, and do we get one here? CCO-22-05, adding Chapter 2.8 to the Mount Shasta Municipal Code regarding police acquisition and use of quote-unquote military equipment. D, adopt resolution CCR-22-11, approving a vehicle permit for Mount Shasta Taxi for a 5-year term. And E, approval of a contract between Mount Shasta Resort and the city for the purchase of reclaimed water. Anybody want to consider any part of this separately?
I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
Since Councilor Redmond and I weren't here last week, do we need to abstain from item A?
Yes.
Does that need to be pulled separately in order to
No,
roll call?
I'll just note that you abstained from the
Thank
vote
you.
on item.
All right, so move to approve consent agenda items A through E by title only.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda number 8, consideration of a salary adjustment for the city director of finance position. City manager, would you introduce this, please?
So looking for the staff report, essentially what it comes down to is this. You may remember the class and comp study from 2019 that looked at a number of cities. Some were comparable in size, some were not, and some were outside of the county, were in Shasta and Tehama County. And what we found is that our police and fire are making, at that time, 43% less than other similar jurisdictions, and we're 37% below other cities on across the board, on average for total compensation. In this case, what I'm asking council to consider is our finance director. What I did is figured let's look at something closer to home. So I pulled the salary structures from Weed and Wairika to take a look at what they're paying, and essentially My suggestion is that bring Muriel's salary in line with Weed, which is the lower of the two cities I looked at, Wairika and Weed. For one, she has specialized training that the other finance directors do not. And, the other thing that I want to make sure that we're in a position of is, especially with our, highly trained staff, department heads, that we're competitive as we continue to move forward, and we're able to, if Muriel decides that she's going to retire, that we're able to attract quality talent up here, and just trying to set us up for success. And what I would add to this is, the public works / city engineer position, we had a reclass and quite an increase in that pay, and we've gone out 3 times and we haven't been able to find anybody qualified. And I think we're, it's lower than other places, but we're paying enough to attract somebody. But what I'm finding is, talking to folks in Reading, the consulting firms, the city, that, on the lower end, they're paying $40,000 more, and even higher than what we're offering now, and they can't find people. So, given today's job market, I'm just trying to make sure that we set ourselves up and we don't get so far behind on our pay structure that we're not able to fill key roles, or we get dragged, for a year on end until we can find somebody that just wants to be up here and will take whatever salary we offer them.
Any clarifying questions, councilors? Do we have any public comment online, or anybody in the audience?
I don't have any hands raised.
I'll bring it back to councilors. Any commentary?
Long overdue. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Do I hear a motion?
Go ahead. I was just going to say that I think we ought to lock Muriel in for another 4 years.
Do I hear 5?
What?
Do I hear 5? Just kidding, Muriel. Just kidding.
7.
All right, so I move to approve this recommended salary increase by the city manager for the finance director. It's not a resolution, no. To match the salary of the weed finance director.
So that would be, to clarify, that's an 11% increase over the current salary structure at her grade. And, Wairika's a bigger city, but they pay substantially more. But Siskiyou County is its own animal, just given where we're located, where our salaries just by their nature are going to be lower than much of the rest of the state, but I just want to at least remain competitive in the county.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we lock her in for 10 years?
You're terrible. Yeah, right. With
There's nothing wrong with walkers, Muriel.
yeah. Agenda item number 9. This is council consideration of a waiver of the short-term rental moratorium for Gloria and Eric Olson. The city managers, would you please introduce this, and then we're going to have some comments by the Olson family.
I'm sorry, that.
Would you introduce this, or do you want him to speak first?
Yes. Gloria and Eric Olson contacted me. They have a situation where they had a couple of registered short-term rentals. Then COVID hit, and because of concerns about people being in and out of their house and contamination, they decided to forgo continuing as a short-term rental and let their, their certificate lapse. And they're in the process of trying to sell those 2 properties now, and they've asked to appeal to City Council to see if they can get a waiver and allow those short-term rentals in their buildings to continue despite the lapse in the approvals. So I don't know if you'd like to say a few words.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. I'll add what I can to that regarding the short-term rental moratorium on business license issued to new owners of vacation rentals. As I understand it, an exception to the short-term rental moratorium that prohibits new business licenses for short-term rentals has been made, and that allows new owners to continue operating existing legal or licensed short-term rentals. As the city manager mentioned, my wife and I own 2 commercially zoned vacation rentals downtown on Mount Shasta Boulevard and Lake Street. We closed our rentals in 2020 when we were advised that vacation rentals should stop operation due to COVID-19. Our short-term rentals remain closed. We thought it prudent to remain closed. We didn't desire to have someone come down with COVID while they were staying at the rental and perhaps turn into a long-term rental, or we didn't want people suffering the consequences of COVID, naturally. And as COVID persisted, we made the difficult decision to sell the vacation rentals, and they went on the market spring of last year. We made significant investments on these 2 buildings before we opened. The sole intention of the extensive renovations, remodels, and improvements was for quality short-term vacation rental use. That brings us to the short-term moratorium. Since we closed our doors in March of 2020 due to COVID, we no longer have a current business license to operate them as a short-term rental. We would like to ask you to consider a waiver for our situation to allow the future owners of our 2 vacation rentals to operate each as a licensed vacation rental. If a waiver is not granted, we may suffer a significant financial loss since these 2 buildings were designed as vacation rentals, and we believe that's, as they are, their best and highest value now. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that the property was put on the market spring of last year?
Yes.
And is it still currently on the market, or has it sold?
Yes.
It's still currently on the market?
Yes, we've had buyers recently turn away because they want to operate as a vacation rental and they don't have a license, and they want to be sure that they can operate them as a short-term rental. And we have no way of honoring that request or
The moratorium was in
Yes.
place?
correct.
And just so that I'm clear, it sat without a buyer in between those 2 times? No offers were made in between spring of last year to now?
There have been offers, yes.
Okay.
Yes, there has been interest, and most recently, that's been a sticking point, is the, we've also lowered the price, and that renewed interest and it coincided with the moratorium. So we're kind of stuck. As far as folks wanting that some assurance that, to put it lightly, that they can still operate them as a short-term rental, live there as well, and the moratorium prevents us from being able to offer that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Tim?
Difficult for me because you're my neighbor. And you have, I know both properties. There's the little cottage in the alley that you bought from Augusta Meyer. And I know that you fixed that up quite nicely. That's being offered for sale separately, either as a residence home or short-term rental, whatever. And then the other property that we're talking about is the former Golden Bough bookstore.
Right,
I think that you bought from Jesse Zappi.
correct.
And whether you sell that property as a short-term rental or for some other commercial use, it's right on Mount Shasta Boulevard. Whether it becomes a restaurant, a short-term rental, a bookstore again,
Right.
whatever, it has considerable value in my mind. And that, again, is you're offering that for sale separate from the cottage in the alley. The concern I have is we made an exception for existing licensees, if you would, to be able to sell to new buyers of existing short-term rentals. And in this case, you haven't operated short-term rentals for 2 years and you haven't maintained license, so you're not a current licensee. So you're asking for a whole new, something that we haven't done before.
Right, well, that's correct. The properties are, naturally, we think they're valuable and they're commercially zoned. I don't think they're exclusively limited as a short-term rental. We've stayed there ourselves and really enjoy being downtown, that location. It's very convenient. The guests we've got positive reviews from folks who have stayed there, people that return year after year. Were it not for COVID, we would not have let the license lapse. We would have kept them open as short-term rental. So that and trying to sell them now and not being able to offer that as to a prospective buyer is an unintended consequence of the moratorium. So COVID and the pandemic is what triggered our decision. We thought we were making a prudent decision at the time, not knowledgeable that there was going to be a moratorium. Hindsight, would have left them open, would have maintained a license. If for no other reason to maintain that option to a future investor.
John?
How long ago was the license lost? Last year, last month?
I'm sorry,
When did you lose the license? When did it lapse? How long ago was that? You said the license is lapsed. When did that actually happen?
I still didn't copy that, I'm sorry.
How long ago did the license lapse that you lost it? Was that 6 months ago, 2021?
How long were they vacation rentals before?
No. You said you lost the license, you don't have them. When did that happen? Was that during 2021 or just recently, a year ago?
That's a good question. I mean, I really don't I don't know. Since we haven't rented it, we haven't paid transient occupancy tax. So we used Linda Williamson was the property manager. So it'd be great if this was a moot point. My understanding is since we closed, they're no longer licensed vacation rentals.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get is, you closed in March of 2022. When are your licenses good for?
Front counter staff that the licenses for the short-term rental have been lapsed for about a year and a half.
Okay, so you lost them a year and a half ago. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
that's what that's
That's
secondhand.
what I'm trying to get.
Yep.
This is when were they lost and why is it important now? Okay, thank you.
John, any questions? One question for you, Eric. You had some of our short-term rentals operate illegally. They don't have license. I just want to make clear, you've operated this legally until COVID. You had a business license for a short-term rental. Is that correct?
As far as I know, my understanding is that the property managers was the licensee, and we worked with her.
Right.
She paid the transient occupancy tax, and it was her license that operated them.
Oh, okay, got it, right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Had a valid short-term rental license.
Right, thank you.
And then he opted to not renew with Linda Williamson, or whoever the property
Or with
manager
the, essentially with the city.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happened when when COVID hit?
A little bit.
Okay.
6 months or so after.
Yeah, and then they waited a year and nothing happened and they decided to sell. And then shortly after that, we did a short-term
It is,
moratorium.
yeah, I mean, it was already registered and COVID hit. It wasn't, the ending of that license wasn't, consistent necessarily with COVID. It's just when that permit ended based on when they applied for it.
Right, got it. Okay, if there's no other questions, let's open this up for public comment. Anybody in here or in the audience or online? Okay, let's bring it back to council then. Anybody like to have some commentary on this? Tessa?
I'm of the inclination to not make an exception.
Okay. When I first read this, I didn't grasp all the details of the situation. Well, let me ask if anybody else has got any commentary first.
So I looked at this issue from the standpoint of a city council and who we serve here. The purpose of this panel is to serve the community as a whole. We made a decision to suspend giving new licenses out, and then we made not an exception, but qualification regarding transferability of existing licenses. And to me, at that point, and there are many reasons why we want to put a moratorium on short-term rentals. One of which is that, from what I understand, it's a unregulated market here in Mount Shasta. It's an unregulated, certainly not thoroughly regulated business market here in Mount Shasta, and we're heading towards regulating it. So that's what the Planning Commission, and possibly the planner will bypass the Planning Commission, from what I can understand, and go directly to us with code on that. So to me, it was a settled issue at that point, after we decided to just allow transfers of existing licenses. This seems particularly specialized and individualized. With no disrespect, sir. Someone is asking for a favor to help them with a business decision, a business prospect, and I do not think that we should be asked to do that to begin with. So I have a problem with this being here in front of us at all. Be really blunt, and that's not your fault, sir. But I have several problems with making exceptions to benefit individuals or a couple in this case after we've made other decisions for the general city good. So I'm inclined not to favor this exception.
John, you got anything?
Yeah, I'm not going for this either, just for the fact that the license was lost over a year and a half ago, and it's only with a recent interest in the sale that this is even before us.
Okay.
And it's a can of worms, and we've told other owners, sorry, you're out of luck until the moratorium's lifted. So that's just a can of worms doing that.
Well, as you might imagine, I have some unusual perspectives on things. I was, like many here, inclined not to support this. But here's my thinking, folks. I'll just offer it up just for what it's worth, because that's what we do. We discuss things amongst ourselves. And we do want short-term rentals, some short-term rentals in our town. In particular, as far as I can see, relative to commentary that's been this year and last year, we want it in the commercial district versus the residential district, or zones. And this gentleman and his family operated 2 units legally, had a license, paid their taxes, unlike many who don't have licenses and don't pay taxes. And through no fault of his own, COVID-19 hits, things shut down. And after a year, they go, well, okay, this is continuing. We're going to put them up for sale. Before we had a short-term, and here's the key part for me that I kind of didn't get, for me anyway, he put the places up for sale before we had a short-term moratorium. And went, well, okay, we're just going to sell them because we can't rent them, and it looks like this COVID thing's not going away. And he just wasn't able to sell it. Along comes a short-term moratorium from us, and now he's in a pinch because there's no guarantee that he can sell them, that the person who buys them, who wants them for a short-term rental, can have one, can have it as such. John, I hear you that this is, it's not clean and easy. I hear you, and I understand that. Had this person not had a license, this would be real easy. The answer is no, but they did. And that summary is kind of why I'm inclined to go, well, yeah, I'm usually the one that's against most of these kinds of things. That's kind of, but in this case, I go, wow, it was, as far as I can figure, did everything right, other than couldn't sell it fast enough before the short-term moratorium kicked in. Anyway, that's my 10 cents on it. I'm open to anybody else's comments and or motion to move forward.
Well, I'll comment. We have a short-term rental ordinance that's in the works that'll be coming before us in the relative near future. I'm not inclined to make additional exceptions while that ordinance is still in the works. We don't know what's going to be recommended to us and how that may or may not affect Eric and Gloria Olson. We also don't know, or I don't know, if there are other property owners like Eric and Gloria out there who allowed their licenses to lapse in the last couple of years. And if we say yes to this individual, then we create a precedence, I think, for however many others there might be. When we're trying to get a handle on short-term rentals, I think their properties are nicely situated, whether it be for a short-term rental or for some other commercial purpose or for the cottage that's in the alley to be purchased and for some family to live there, a couple or individual to live there. But for those reasons, I am not inclined to grant this exception for a individual or couple at this time.
Well, unless somebody's changed their mind based on my eloquent conversation, let's move to
Do we
For a
vote
motion.
in this case if it's not approving?
You don't have to do anything in this case, but just to make sure the will of the council is clear, I do recommend a vote.
Okay.
In the minutes order.
Move to approve the exception to the moratorium on short-term rentals for this.
No,
Move to approve the exception requested,
exemption, yeah.
exemption requested for Olson. Yeah, I'm putting it up there. Well, you know how I'm going to vote, but whatever.
Oh.
Move to approve the exceptions
I see.
requested by the Olsons
Yeah.
regarding the moratorium on short-term rentals. Yes, I know it seems contradictory, but okay, so that's the motion.
Right.
You did this in 2019 now.
Then you
I've
second?
done it several times.
Can you second? Because you're going to be the only.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
By roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Redmond?
No.
Councilmember Stackler?
No.
Councilmember Stearns?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Clure?
No.
Mayor Collings?
Yes.
Let me suggest that the Olsons can come back when we have the ordinance under consideration to see whether there might be a change of circumstance or a change of position at that point in time. Since we have an ordinance being drafted, we don't really know what it is yet, but we expect it to come before us within the next few months, I think.
The ordinance will replace the moratorium, but is there an estimated timeline on that? Are you thinking 6 months, a year, unknown?
City Manager, do you have any idea where that ordinance is in the Planning Commission?
I don't know exactly where that is right now, how close we are.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard anything. I just wonder if you know. I'm sorry, I don't want to hazard a guess because it would be, that's unfair, although I suspect we can get in contact with the Planning Commission and get you that information.
Sorry also, and I will be processing the process, so to speak, because it sounds to me like as a result of the moratorium, COVID, our decision to sell our real property, there's some unintended consequences, and sounds like it's in the process that there's unintended consequences. And I would hope that the city, in making a decision like a moratorium, would not also affect other people's businesses, were there a decision made to, say, limit the number of cafes or bars that serve alcohol? And someone makes the freedom of their choice to sell and move on, either because of health or just because it's their freedom of choice to do so, and they're told, no, it's kind of like we did a zone change or we did a use permit change. Moratorium, not anymore. You can sell the structure, but you can't sell it as this type of business.
Yeah.
And that's what we're dealing with. So
Right.
Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll look forward to a resolution so that we can move on.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 10, discussion on possible action, hiring of a recruitment firm to seek candidates for the position of Public Works Director, which it sounds like we need to do, but Todd, would you introduce this, please?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, council reclassed the Public Works Director position, which is what we've traditionally had here, to a Public Works Director, City Engineer position, and considerably raised the salary under the notion that if you're hiring a licensed engineer, that you would be able to design, that person could design and build projects, which would then save money from having our engineer of record, Pace, take these projects on at a considerable cost. So we've now gone out 3 times, and we found a couple qualified candidates, and they backed out once they realized how expensive it was here, and they went back to their original employer, and they were offered quite a bit more. So what I'm thinking is, since we have put this out in a number of publications, and we're not getting the candidate we want, it might be better for us to go out to a headhunting firm that has their own set of folks that they can reach out to, and they can do a more of a region-wide search, including a neighboring states. So it's one way to go about it. Again, it's sort of a crapshoot, and I want to just share with us too. Again, getting it back to engineering positions, public works, city engineer type positions. There are a lot of them around us that are paying considerably more, and they aren't being filled. Pace can't fill them. It's just the demand is just too high right now for a bunch of professional staff. So my proposal is, our best bet moving forward in my mind is that we hire a headhunting firm with a not to exceed contract amount of $35,000. Last time when we hired a headhunting firm, it was $30,000. The additional $5,000 is to hedge our bets, just because some of the costs have gone up. But I'm confident with that amount of money we can find a headhunting firm to go out.
Okay. Questions?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Are we using Gary Phillips from Bob Murray on this, or is this somebody, we got to use somebody different?
We'd go out with an RFP, a quick one, but I do outreach to a couple firms. I know there is another headhunting firm that is over the border in Oregon that aren't typically doing city manager searches, but department head searches, and they have a fair amount of success, and they're a little less expensive than the others. Gary Phillips and Associates are excellent. That could be a choice too. There are a whole host, but.
But
This might be a stretch, but since we lost our head of public works during COVID, would this qualify as a COVID expense? And can we tap into that money to recruit?
There would have to be a nexus between that position leaving and COVID. Mm-hmm. So you know, if it's safety of his family and he decided to move on. We would have to have some connection there. Muriel, I don't know if you see any.
I know that there's been some leeway with employment in general because of COVID-19. We're seeing a lot of hard opportunity to fill positions. So I was just curious if that maybe fell into it, maybe something to look into. Second question is, you said that the few that were interested became disinterested quickly after because of how expensive it was. Is that due to our cost of living in locally? Is that what you
Correct.
mean? Okay. And with the headhunter, would they make suggestions if our salary was too low?
They would.
Okay, thank you.
You know, another potential consideration that we may want to bring back at another time, and this is up to council, is going back to the original classification as a public works director, not requiring the CEP stamp. And, you know, again, using the rates that Wairika and Weed are paying, potentially bring that public works director salary without requiring the stamp up to at least Weed's level. And, you know, we've gotten a fair number of applicants that don't have a PE and C, quite a bit more, that look really actually pretty qualified. And I think if that's just another consideration.
Thank you.
Through the chair. So process-wise, this will be your hire, correct? You'll be assisted by possible headhunting group, but the sorting, the interviewing will all be done by you with the assistance of the headhunter, or will we be involved, or will there be an ad hoc committee you would want to form up?
Well, I think we've got with David Torres, with Muriel, you know, and myself in the interviews. I think we've got it covered. I mean, you know, Muriel's got the finance side. Obviously, David has been doing the job, and I've got considerable experience in public works, so I can ask the questions of whether or not this person's competent.
I really don't want to be involved. The prior experience was very time consuming.
Okay, fair enough.
And so with the possible exception of approving a salary increase versus whatever the other one was, we would just wait for your determination as to the best candidate, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, a few questions based upon what's been discussed. Number one, because of the amount of money involved, I assume this will be an RFP.
Yes.
Second, you are the CEO, so you do the hiring and firing. City Council doesn't get involved in your choice of the Public Works Director, or
And it appears the council would like it that way?
Public Works Director / engineer. My other question, however, is has staff conducted a cost-benefit analysis as to reverting back to Public Works Director versus City Engineer / Public Works Director?
So how do I answer this? That's a hard call to make, because when you're interviewing people with a CEPE stamp, of course they'll tell you they'll be able to design and build projects. And you can ask them their experience on what they've actually built and designed. But unless they've held this position of Public Works Director and City Engineer, given their time constraints, we don't know how much time they're actually going to have to do a considerable amount of design and construction on their own until they actually get in the position and we see. So it isn't a clear cut, you know, I'm going to give you a cost-benefit ratio of 0.73 to 6. You know, we just don't know. It's kind of a, you know, we're likely to see savings. with a PE and CE, but to what magnitude, we don't know until we see them in the position.
Understand correctly, you will bring back to council at the next city council meeting, probably on consent agenda, on RFP to go out? Is that the idea? Or are you asking
That's-
for permission tonight? Are you asking for the council to take action tonight? To
So what I'm looking for is council to take action tonight to approve this potential option. And then this gets into an area where it's internal, but we have a public works supervisor who could easily fill this role, who's extremely qualified. He doesn't want to touch the public works director with a 10-foot pole, but you know, when it involved, you know, if the numbers met Weeds, he said he would consider it, but he would let me know by the end of the week.
So, but the proposal, the action that you're asking us to take or consider taking has to do with putting out an RFP for a talent company.
Yes.
The same as we found you. Those headhunters look for city managers, assistant city managers, department heads, et cetera. And I think if I understand correctly, you're just asking for whether we want to proceed with a standard RFP for this particular
Yes.
position.
So let me walk you through this. It's what I'm looking for is approval to go out to a headhunter, and what I want to do is then back pocket that until I hear from our current public works supervisor that he may consider it if council would then consider the public works director role without city engineer being reclassed with pay toward, equal with what Weed is paying. But I don't know if this person is interested until the end of the week. So if this person says no, as far as I'm concerned, it's a dead issue for now, and then I'd go out with a headhunter.
All right, and if the individual says, yes, would be willing to step up to Public Works Director, you'll inform council and make a recommendation, presumably, that the revised position of Public Works Director, City Engineer goes back to being Public Works Director.
Yes, and if you choose not to go back that direction, then I've got the back pocket of going out to a headhunter, and I'll have an RFP written, ready to go.
Can we put this to some public comments? I think it's...
Well, one more question then. Based upon what you've just said, it doesn't sound like we really need to pass any motion or take any action tonight.
Other than by taking a motion tonight, it may save me a week or two of getting that RFP out and potentially getting a city engineer, public works director in place a little quicker.
Okay.
So just to clarify, we used to use the term with your predecessor quite a bit, direct staff. Is that what, would that be appropriate here? We're giving you direction with respect to possible RFP. Would that be sufficient?
Yes.
Okay, nobody out. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to come speak on this issue? Let's bring it back to council. Are there any other comments, or do I hear a motion?
Can I just throw out a shout out? I don't know if David is interested in this, but and he's reluctant because of some of the some of the aspects of the job. But what he's done since I've been on is proven he's extremely competent. He's good with the public. He could walk into this role tomorrow.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize city manager to issue an RFP for not more than $35,000 for headhunting services for public works director / city engineer if he deems that necessary and appropriate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 11, reports on outside meetings. There weren't any. And on future agenda items and meetings, counselors, anybody want to make any suggestions on or off?
No, I just have a question. Johnson Controls had a firm date,
Yeah.
so that's changed. What's going on?
That's a great question. The answer I got back is they've been a little disorganized, and they promised they'll be back at the next meeting.
Anybody else?
Nothing else to put on the future agenda. I do want to point out that City of Mount Shasta is hosting the League of Cities quarterly meeting on May 20th. We have the meeting scheduled to, the lunch meeting scheduled to occur here between 1:30 and 3:30 in this building. Probably at 12 or 12:30 in the morning, there will be a tour of the museum for those representatives who are interested in doing that. Immediately after the meeting, starting probably somewhere between 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock, there will be a couple of different, excuse me, I misspoke. There'll be a tour before the lunch meeting of the fish hatchery. After the meeting, there will be,
Jefferson Soul?
and actually, before the meeting also, there is the Shasta Soul, Jefferson Soul
Right.
tour, cannabis tour, which may include both Jefferson Soul and one of the retail outlets. After the meeting, there will be tour of the museum, and/or an alternate tour would be of downtown businesses, presumably Soul Connections, Crystal Room, possibly another business, and the Thrive Bar, Lewis Thrive Bar, with a little information about kombucha microbrewery.
What do you need from us, if anything?
To show up.
Yeah, yeah.
May 20th.
Where's the dinner?
It's a lunch.
And it's right here,
It's a lunch.
right here.
It's a lunch meeting
Got
of
it.
the Sacramento Valley Division of the League of California
Yeah.
Cities.
But you
It's
said
like
the lunch
noonish?
was, I'm sorry.
Huh? The lunch meeting will start at 1:30.
1:30.
Anybody else?
And that's on Friday the 20th.
Friday the 20th.
Yes.
Thank you for doing lunch and not dinner. I can attend.
Indeed. Well, folks, if there's nothing else, we'll move to the last agenda item, which is to adjourn. We are done. Thank you.
Thank you, friend. You know?
The good news is, dear friend, went through this